Hello and welcome to the first Codex Drukhari Unit Series video. Today we take a look and we dive in deep. We look at the leaders of the Cabals, the faithful Archons. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the first video in our tactical series looking at a unit by unit of the new Drukhari Codex. Now I'll be doing this for the entire series of Drukhari Codex, so stay tuned to the new Drukhari 8th edition playlist. I'm Skari, your grateful host, the fancy Archon. If you have any comments, questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Now, these videos go in two parts. The first part, I discuss the unit's lore. I also go into some basics of the unit distinctions, like statistics, things like that. And then at the end, I finish off with how you, as a Drukhari Archon, can best use this unit in-game. Now, for more in-depth tactical analysis, I'll be doing a full Patreon series for the Patreons, where I go deep into the nitty-gritty of every single tactical choice that you can do with each of these units. Over time, there will be a full library. So, these are the basic videos. If you'd like some more, check the links down below. So, the first and foremost part of our story and our journey starts with the humble, well, maybe not humble as you might think, Archon. The Archons of the Drukhari Cabals are the true monarchs of Commorragh. In both word and deed, each Archon is as poisonous as a serpent, their mind as labyrinthine as the darkest reaches of the webway. Despite the elaborate network of allegiances within the Dark City, the overlords of the Cabals run rings around those who seek to beat them at their deadly game. Reveling in the depths of the abyss always has a cost, however. Over the years in which they have clawed their way up the precipice of power, the Archons of the Drukhari have become something altogether more otherworldly. Before going to battle, an Archon will visit their weapons museum, savoring the process of selection as they choose between the most arcane and lethal of all the technologies of Commorragh. Thus, accoutred, the Archon strides haughtily onto the battlefield, eyeing the enemies with utter disdain. So I didn't read the entire excerpt. If you want to read that, you can go right to the Drukhari Codex for 8th edition. But it helps illustrate the position that Archons hold within a Cabal. Now, Archons are your basic Cabal HQ. And there's not much of a variety in terms of what you get. You know, they move like an elf, like an Eldar. They have high movement, 8 inches. They hit the best weapon skill and ballistic skill you can hit. They have a puny strength of 3 and a toughness 3. They have a decent amount of wounds, less than 6 wounds, but they have a good amount of wounds. They have a decent amount of attacks at 5. They're good leadership, almost perfect, and their save is a 5+. They're a single model that is armed with either a splinter pistol, which is free, and a Husk Blade, which is just like 6 points. The Archon comes in at 70 points or so, plus war gear. The cheapest you can get an Archon is with a splinter pistol and a Venom Blade. We'll get to that in a second. But what the Archon brings is a bit of versatility. Now, you can essentially make a toolkit character out of both of the Archon, and later we will see the Homunculus. But an Archon itself is your representation of the battlefield. Unless you're a witch or a Homunculus Coven. But for you, your fledgling Archon, he represents you on the battlefield. Now, he does have a few war gear options. So let's dive into those. The model can replace its Husk Blade with either an Agonizer, Power Sword, or Venom Blade. So let's take a quick look at each of those options and what they do. A Husk Blade is a melee weapon, gives the user +1 strength, bringing the Archon to strength 4. It's -2 AP, a decent AP, and it's D3 damage. Now, the index version didn't have the +1 to strength. Means that your Archon, at standard, would be strength 4, wounding Marines and things on 4+, has -2 AP, which is decent against most armor. It forces at least an invulnerable save. And it does D3 damage. If one of those get through, the chances are you will be doing some damage to your target, which is pretty cool. With 5 attacks hitting on 2s, you're going to get some damage in. Now, you can also have an Agonizer. An Agonizer is essentially another melee weapon, and it's a poison melee weapon with -2 AP and only 1 damage, which means even with his low strength of 3, he can go up against tough targets, toughness 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, as long as they are not vehicles, and wound them on a 4+. This can be rather handy if you have a lot of monstrous creatures or monsters in your vicinity, or even you just want a cheaper option than the Husk Blade. Although, with the +1 strength, the Husk Blade is a pretty cool option. The Power Sword is another option. Your standard melee weapon with -3 AP and 1 damage. You give up the ability to wound on a set 4+ in order to be able to have an extra AP. This is probably the version of your Archon that you will use the least. I've never used a Power Sword on an Archon, and I don't know if you have, and your die-hard Power Swords, leave a comment down below. I'd like to hear your stories and exploits with your Power Sword wielding Archon. The last is one of my favorite, the Venom Blade. This is another poison weapon, sort of like the Agonizer, with no negative modifiers to armor saves. But the Venom Blade adds 2 to the wound roll, and as long as you're not attacking a vehicle, which means it wounds on a 2+. Now this is extremely useful to force lots of armor saves on an opponent, and it is the cheapest weapon option for an Archon, bringing its 2 points for Venom Blade. Now this, in and of itself, makes the Venom Blade one of my favorite choices. I love forcing the opponent to roll as many dice as possible, because you never know when they're going to fail a lot of armor saves. And if I just keep throwing dice at them to roll, eventually they're going to fail saves. And that is good. And I really, really like the Venom Blade Archon. He usually gets 5 hits and usually 4 or 5 wounds very easily on a consistent basis, making him very efficient at what he does and also very cheap for his points cost. The Archon has 3 main abilities. Oh, another warrior option before I forget. You can have the Splinter Pistol upgraded to a Blast Pistol. The Blast Pistol is now D6 damage. It's strength 8 -4 AP, and it's at a 6-inch range. So at close range with a Blast Pistol, it's not that expensive. He can be blowing holes in tanks, monsters, and if he's in a protracted combat, the enemy's going to want to either kill him or walk away from him before he powers up that Blast Pistol and shoots into his into combat, essentially, when he's fighting a character or dueling someone. I'm a big fan of the Blast Pistol. I think it's a good choice for the Archon. Usually I run him with a Splinter Pistol that I can turn into a relic, but the Blast Pistol can be very handy in a pinch. So, as I said, 3 abilities for your Archon. First is your generic Power from Pain. The Archon has Power from Pain. That means that your Archon will have a 6-up, ignore wounds starting on turn 1. He will reroll advance and charge rolls starting turn 2. He will get +1 to hit starting turn 3. On turn 4 he becomes fearless, which is relatively useless for him because he's a single model. And on turn 5+, enemy units within 6 inches have a -1 leadership, which can come in handy later in the game. The second one is his Shadow Field. This is an ability, which is kind of fun. It's a 2+ invulnerable save. Think about that. 2+ invulnerable save. That cannot be rerolled for any reason. So no using your command points to reroll that 2+. The first time the invulnerable save is failed, it stops working for the rest of the battle. This piece of war gear epitomizes the arrogance of the Dark Eldar Archon in its entirety. It's a crazy good save, 2+, invulnerable. But as soon as you fail it, it's done. So, lots of volume attacks are very good against an Archon. If you force the Archon to take as many saves as possible, he will eventually fail a save, and therefore will eventually not have his 2+ save at all. This helps you get through to his squishier 5+ armor save. Another good way to deal with this as an opponent is using mortal wounds against the Archon. Okay, and last but not least, he is an Overlord. You reroll hits of 1 for friendly Cabal units that are within 6 inches. That is both for shooting and close combat. Means it gives him an aura. All the units around him, tanks, infantry that are Cabal, reroll 1s to hit in close combat as well as shooting. This makes him very reliable. It also makes that he's hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s in combat, which is great. So keep that in mind, guys. You want him to be in a supporting role. You can keep him back with a bunch of Ravagers and have them reroll 1s to hit. You can move him forward with some Cabalite warriors and jump him into combat, you know, to get them to reroll 1s. And there's a lot of little strategy involved. Recently in a battle report, I sent my Archon together with 2 10-man units of Black Heart Cabal Cabalite warriors, and they charged in, and it was turn 3, so they're hitting on 3s, they were fearless, and they were hitting on 2s, sorry, they were fearless, and they were rerolling 1s in combat, putting a lot of hurt on my poor Eldar opponent. So, that's something to keep in mind. So, faction keywords, Eldari, Drukhari, Cabal, so you can make him any Cabal you want, and keywords, he's a character, he is infantry, and he is an Archon. So, where the Archon gets fun is with the different relics that you can pick and choose, but that is a topic for another video, so stay tuned for more of that content. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. You guys are amazing. I appreciate the support, and let me know what it is that you like about your Archon. I get really passionate about the Drukhari, so leave a comment down below, fellow Archons, and this, Skari, your grateful host, will sign off until next time. Skari out.